Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. I wanted to do a video today on chronic guilt and shame and my personal journey with it, and how through across, like, I would say easily 20 years of my life, I just went very up and down with it. It's a very cold day today, so that's why I'm super packed up with a jacket, and like this thing, like there's no sunlight, and I'm just like, and I feel cold a little more than the average person. So I, yeah, today is just one of those days. But that's why I have this like robber kind of look. So before I go on, please subscribe to this channel. If you are interested in our coaching services, you can email phil@ocdrecovery.com. If you also go to our website, there is a link directly to a WhatsApp chat that we have, that you can contact, and you can learn more about sessions and what our services are and things like that. So there's also webinars every week, Tuesdays 8:30 p.m. UK time, and you can sign up for those. There are various topics. We post our schedules on Instagram stories on a regular basis every week, so watch out for those. You can also, if you end up messaging or emailing Phil, then you can also ask him for the updated webinar schedule, and he can send you whatever is coming up. So just some basic info for your help. So I think my journey with chronic guilt and shame started actually pretty early, even before I would say I had my first like full on onset with OCD. And it was, I think, I don't know, some of my earliest memories in terms of like my personality and whatnot, like some of my earliest memories are related to just me just not wanting to be a bad person. I never wanted to disappoint anyone, and I always wanted to fulfill people's expectations. That was like me as a child. I'll just take this off because my ears are, I don't know, just getting clamped up. um yeah, and I don't know, for some reason I think, like, logically, if I look back, I think this might have started from like school. Like, I mean, I had the tendency already, I guess, and my environment was, I've grown up in a traditional and like somewhat religious environment, and there has been a lot of discussion around, again, what's good and bad, but also just on a daily basis, very ethical discussions around what are considered good manners and bad manners, right? Like especially from my mom's side, actually from both my parents' side, like there has been like that narrative of what's considered decent and what's considered polite, what's considered nice and formal, and this and that. So I guess maybe I was already in that environment. So even as a kid, maybe I like somewhere heard that and really absorbed those lessons. But then with school, I think what happened was, and in this video there will be some things that will sound like me bragging, but trust me, I'm not bragging. But like with school, I like, since kindergarten or playgroup, whatever you guys call it on your end, um I was just naturally good at like school. I was like yeah, I did well. I didn't need that. My teachers praised me, like, even with like parent teacher meetings. My like n- at no point did my teachers ever have a complaint with me. The maximum complaint my teachers had with me was he talks a lot, because I loved to talk to people around me. I loved to socialize and interact and all those things. But other than that, like, there were never any big complaints that any of my teachers had. So I think that, again, I don't remember a moment where I was like, oh, this person has said this and therefore I need to fulfill this expectation. But like, logically thinking, I think that might have been what happened. That I absorbed some of those observations and comments and compliments about me, and I just wanted to be a person who wanted to please other people, right? And wanted to fulfill their expectations, because somehow there was this like, and yeah, I mean, I was a nerd kid. I was a fun nerd kid, and so I think from playgroup till word class at grade like 3 or grade 4, I was also like the top student in the class. So again, not bragging at all, I promise, but like, I'm just trying to give you like just a just an explanation of how, like, some of the bases and some of the background foundations that can start building chronic guilt and shame, because it's not different, like it's not the same for every person. It can be different, the context might be slightly different for each person, of like what their background was and things like that, but and what sparked their first chronic guilt and shame thing. But so yeah, so that's why I'm setting the stage for what's about to come, like later on. So I think with that, so being like the top student, or one of the like top students, like that also just there was this expectation that I need to keep this up and I need to keep doing well. And that wasn't just like with academics, and it was also like, okay, I need to be a good person as well, because I can't be like a shit person and be like the top of the class. Also have to be nice, I have to be everyone's friend, I have to be sociable, I have to be likable, all those kinds of things. And then even with co-curricular activities, because I used to do like the theater. I used to like act on stage. I used to give those, like when you kid, they do like some like mini declamation kind of speeches and things. So I used to do those, and I was very involved, like with art and extra co-curricular activities and whatnot. So like I want, and not that I felt like I had to. I genuinely loved and enjoyed doing those things, so I really wanted to keep those up. But then with that was this expectation of also like, okay, maybe I need to excel at these things, maybe I need to be like the better one, and like again always have that kind of validation and acceptance from people around me. And then this easily transferred on to like religion. And I think my like now looking back, I my first like full blown OCD episode was at when I was 13 or 14 years old. But if I really go back, I can see how even at the age of 8 or 9, or 7 even, I think, how I was starting to get my first intrusive thoughts, right? And that came with religion, right? So whenever I used to be praying, I used to have intrusive thoughts, not intrusive threats. They feel like intrusive threats, but I used to get intrusive thoughts about having sex with God, right? That was, I mean, that's like your max level of blasphemy that you can think of, right? And that just obviously made me extremely uncomfortable. I did not want those thoughts. I did not know why those thoughts were coming to me. And naturally, I felt like I was basically a perverted person. I was just like, there was some maybe hidden sinister element in me that that I couldn't suppress, right? And I really wanted like just to I wanted to make sure. So the same with like wanting to fulfill people's expectations and wanting to be just a good person in people's eyes. Then it naturally, when I started to become a little familiar with religion and started to practice it a little bit, like when I was like 8. I mean, as much as you can when you're like very young, right? Because you're not like super practicing it, but you're just like dipping your toes a little bit in different things. So it just was like, okay, I also need to please God, and I need to like just do good by God and not like be this shitty little kid. And that was like one of the first instances where I started feeling really uncomfortable. And also, that was the kind of like the precursor for me. Basically, my chronic guilt and shame was primarily, yes, there was a lot of like moral scrupulosity attached to it, of just generally being a morally good person, but then also there was a massive like element of sexual thoughts and sexualized thoughts, right? I was terrified, absolutely terrified, and also absolutely disgusted with myself, right, as a kid. Because when you're young, sex is you see, well, depending on what environment that you grow up in, if it's like a if it's relatively normalized things, maybe you don't have that. But like at least like how I grew up, like obviously sex was a controversial subject, especially for kids, right? It's a hush hush kind of subject. You're not supposed to talk about it. You're not supposed to think about it, and it's something that you need to be like shied away from kind of situation. So my like the longest running thread that chronic guilt and shame started over here, and it carried on being there was this like sexual theme with it, that I was, and I was constantly trying to distance myself from this like label and this notion of that I am a sexual person, or I'm a sexualized person, or like I have sexual desires. Like I thought that was like the most, like, again, the most perverted thing that I could be. So so that's where it started from. Again, going back to school, I'll go back and forth because I just want to give you like just a picture of my life. Like across my school life, I think slowly but surely, it also started to come into my friendships where I was really scared of upsetting my friends. And like if I felt like I had upset my friend, there would be this like huge lump in my throat, and I would just have this like heaviness in my chest, and I would want to make it right. I would want to just like patch things up. I didn't want any friend to be upset with me because I was afraid that they will never speak to me again. And since I was a kid, like again, I love talking to people, but that's also why I valued friendships a lot. So naturally, like my anxieties like kind of like latched onto that thing. So but then in my mind, and I was always like very self-aware since I was a kid. So because of that, I was also like and I observed a lot around me. I was very observant as a person. So and from my lens, I thought that like all other kids around me are just kids, right? They're normal kids, and I'm this kid who is starting to have sexual thoughts. And I'm not even sure, by the way, like whether that randomly started happening or whether there was some exposure to the conversations around like sex or intimacy. I don't know, but basically, like I just started to I just knew that I didn't know what sex entailed, by the way, but I just knew that sex means some physical interaction and that it's like controversial. That's all my concept of sex was when I was a kid, right? Um, but in my mind, I felt like nobody else is thinking about it, and I'm the only one thinking about it. Again, your early seeds of I'm the exception, I'm the worst person, other people are nice, I have this like hidden dark side of me that nobody knows about. I think so. One of the I think so. I got exposed to, or I stumbled upon, like pornographic imagery when I was maybe 8 years old. I think 8 or 9 years old, something like that. And that was not my first like exposure or like encounter with the notion of sex or whatever. I think there was something a little or even earlier than that. Again, maybe a conversation that I had heard or something. I don't know. I don't have memory of that, but I do have memory of having exposure to pornographic images on by myself, by the way. Like nobody showed anything to me. No friend brought it to me or something. I had that, and like, and I think that was also like the first time I was like, wait, like what's going on? Obviously, because you can't comprehend those things very well when you're young. So I think having that kind of imagery then like popping up in my mind quite frequently, and then comparing myself to other people, nobody else was like even saying anything remotely about like sex or sexual thoughts or intimacy. So I felt like I was definitely this like perverted exception, and firmly believed that I was some kind of sexual deviant. That was something I just like was bent on and convinced about. I didn't, because I felt like there's no other way. Why would I be thinking about these things, or why would I be having these thoughts or these like sexual urges if I was a good person completely? Like I'm not a good person completely. I am some like a sinister sexual deviant. So again, guilt started to show up with that, and like quite a lot. And then when I was in my teens, so naturally that's when you're starting to get more hormones, and you're hitting puberty, and you're just like starting to feel really a lot more sexual and things like that. And that added another layer of controversy for me, because I was also, again, like one of the first people in my class, I think, who developed whose voice started to change, who started to develop facial hair like a mustache a little bit, that ugly kind of puberty mustache, not my great days. And because I also had like buck teeth, so I just like looked, I don't know, like a Bugs Bunny with mustache. Like that's not a great look. Um, and then there was, so yeah, that started happening, and as I found out later, at least amongst my class fellows, I was also the one who I was probably like the first person who discovered what self pleasuring is. So that just like made me like, that was proof for me. That was evidence for me that, see, I like, yes, other people naturally did discover like sex or sexual acts, but I was someone who discovered it first and way earlier than I should have, and that proves that there's some sexual deviant in me that needs to be watched, and that needs to be even maybe controlled or kept hidden, by the way. And I felt completely isolated because these are things that I, for years, I think even up till the age of maybe 16, 17, 18, I think I just never shared these things with anyone because I didn't want anyone to think that I was this like hypersexualized kind of kid. And having any kind of like fetishes or like extra desires just made me feel like I was having controversial thoughts, and this is something that again just needs to be bottled up, and I can't or shouldn't speak to anyone about it. So I also just felt completely isolated and alone in this sport, and I just thought that this is the kind of boat that I'm going to float in by myself, like for the rest of my life, right? That kind of notion then came up. And um and that's where also then in my teens where my my initial compulsions then started to kick in with emotional and mental contamination, because I used to have wet dreams, as every guy does, which I didn't know at the time. So I thought that there was something broken with my sexual system, or that I had, because of my perverted acts or something like that, I was trying to have sexual dreams that were leading to orgasms, and that just felt like another level of controversy for me. It just consumed me so much, this internal narrative of like I'm this sick person, or I'm this like perverted sexualized hypersexualized kind of kid, and now I can't escape it even in my dreams kind of thing. And what I started to do was then, like, because of these dreams, I started to like shower immediately in the middle of the night. Like I would be like, I can't like sit with this like feeling of that I've just had this dream. I need some way to make myself feel okay, and calm myself down or something. So I would start showering in the middle of the night and then go back to bed, because I felt like I couldn't otherwise. Like I wouldn't be clean if I again, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, I wouldn't be clean if I don't shower and then go to bed. Of course, like much later, I found out that other guys have this as well. This is a normal thing, like literally scientifically, like all, so like every guy has that. And so and then in retrospect, I was like, what was I like? Uh, Making myself this controversial figure. I wasn't. Like this is. I wish I had known that other people were going through this, so I didn't feel like I was like this someone who was alone. So yeah, I was changing clothes frequently. I was to kind of like throw clothes in the laundry if I felt again mentally or emotionally contaminated, because I felt like I need to, because my clothes I felt like also got somehow contaminated with those things. A little compulsive praying also started because I wanted to just kind of pray my sexual deviance away, because it kept making me feel like such a bad person, such a bad person. And like whenever someone would give me a compliment, whether it was my teachers or even like someone like in the family or a relative randomly gave me a compliment of like, oh, like I don't know, Momin is a nice kid or something like that, the first immediate like response and retort in my head would be like, yeah, but you don't know what I am inside. You don't know who that I am actually, like a shit person, that or that I am this like sleazy person that you don't know about. And if you knew about it, you wouldn't like me at all, or you wouldn't want to talk to me. You wouldn't want to associate with me. Like it would be this like immediate fire back response of like, yeah, but you don't know the real me, right? If you knew, then you would like not like me. And so it felt like I was living some kind of double life, on the face of it, where I was completely appearing as this really nice kid who had a lot of friends, who excelled at his academics, and was, just happy, fun, jokey. But inside, it was like, oh, there's this dark, sinister side. So I dealt most of this in private. I didn't discuss it with my friends for not wanting to expose myself. It was very well masked in my life, and just again not something that I ever let anyone in on until much later. But even then, I think I want like when you're obviously when you're a teenager and when guys around you also start talking about like sexual thoughts and acts and things like that. You have those conversations with your friends in school, but it was still for me. I think I always tried to give some kind of censored version of it a little bit, or some like there was something about it that I would like maybe tone down a little bit or alter because I felt like and because I felt like I had to do that because otherwise they would not see me as a normal kid with sexual thoughts. They would see me as some kind of creep, right? But now looking back, maybe even they were toning that stuff down as well, because I think everybody kind of just has these like private moments, because obviously it's a very private, intimate thing, your sexual desires and your preferences. But obviously people don't like just put it out on a plate like in very explicit terms that this is what I want and like and this is what I've done. So I think everybody was doing that, but back then it just felt like I was the only one. So this thing was and also my sexual drive was also high. Like I again uh, after having conversations with my friends and whatnot, I realized that they weren't as sexually driven, or at least that's how I perceived it. I felt like I was, though, and the frequency of having sexual thoughts as well also made me feel very guilty and shameful and embarrassed about myself as a person. I rejected my own self based off of that, and all of this comes from this notion of, again, nobody like sat me down and taught me this. It's just something that you absorb from your environment and you just somehow end up thinking, because it's kind of like how society thinks in general, is that if there's something bad, that becomes like that comes to the forefront, right? There might be 100 good things about you, but if there's one bad thing about you, that is what takes precedence over everything else. So that's what I was doing. I was using my bad side as my primary definitional thing internally, and I was rejecting myself and beating myself up for it because I thought that that was my true representation. My good things weren't my true representation. That was maybe just a fake act, but the rest of it was what I actually was. Because it's like what you are in private is what you actually are kind of situation. So yeah, I mean, like, just even having a higher sexual drive again made me feel like I was that I just am not like a normal person. I'm not like other people at all. Again, that feeling of being the exception. On top of it, you add other things such as again having OCD as well, which I wasn't aware of, but I definitely knew that other people don't think the same way about like some behaviors and what they're anxious about and not. I knew that that was just a me thing. That made me feel even more isolated. I also experienced like sexual abuse when I was younger. So that also was like I can't talk to anyone about this. So it was layer on layer on layer on layer of feeling isolated, and all these things that I felt like made me the exception and just completely alone, right? And because these are not things you grow up thinking, oh, I can talk to everyone about this, but like no. Um, and of course, um, like the hypersexuality and stuff like that, because there's a lot of like narrative about it, how that's often linked to people who experience sexual abuse as well. So that, like, I'm not going into that discussion right now because that's literally a completely separate thing. I'm just overall talking about what I experienced and how that like made me feel every step of the way kind of thing. um so I think for and in some ways I just kind of got used to it. I mean, I didn't like it, and I had strong bouts of chronic guilt and shame throughout my teens, and then even up till my mid 20s. Massively felt like a bad person as soon as I felt like I had done something to let someone down. not fulfill their expectations, upset them, hurt them, and just like at times just like really for hours ruminating about the same thing over and over and over and over again, because almost as if I was trying to undo what I thought I had done. And it was just like I have to really get to the bottom of this. What is going on? Why am I going through this? What is happening? And like trying to figure out where I went wrong, why I did it, where did it come from, how can I make it all right? Does that person hate me? Does that person not? They messaged me, their tone was like this, their like mannerism was like this, their gesture was like this. Maybe that is proof they like me. Like going over and over again of like what other people also did just to look for some kind of proof that they did not. I mean, in fact, like even if I knew, if I had come across some evidence that they did hate me, I mean, I just wanted to know whether they hated me or not. The uncertainty of it was would just like absolutely kill me, because it was that uncertain space that just kept me anxious, kept me doing compulsions. Reassurance, confessing was massive for me in relationship OCD with my friends, and also with some like romantic relationships as well. And then on top of that, contamination OCD just got like doubled and tripled and quadrupled over the years, because that was the only way I felt like I could keep clean. Because if I and so if I were, and this is the crazy part, because then contamination kind of spreads everywhere. So even if I touched like a light switch or something, it there were several things I would feel all at the same time. There was a feeling of disgust. There were anxiety sensations. Like if my hand touched a light switch, it was like my hand, I physically felt like it was vibrating, right, with anxiety. Like it was like this. Like, and so there were physical sensations, anxiety sensations, disgust, but also like in a strange way I felt like I was there was chronic guilt and shame. That guilt, and also depression, again, that was also one of my biggest fears. So I felt like guilt, shame, depression, um anxiety sensations, all of that was on my contaminated hand. It was all here. And so which is why then that massively increased my compulsions, that that kept me in a cycle of counting. Okay, I've watched it once, I've watched it twice, I've watched it 3 times, I watched it 4 times, 5 times. um and then on my worst days, I think I have easily, I think I on my worst days I've washed my hands like at least 100 times. And at times I would lose count, and then I would do extra just to make up for it, kind of thing. Again, all of it coming from the fact that if I've done one thing bad, that means I need to be discarded as a person. So then the question is, how did I overcome it? Well, before coming into OCD recovery, I think that like I really started to be like, okay, how can I, like, why am I beating myself up for things that also other human beings are going through? And there was a lot of like, there were so many not in a, I wasn't seeking this information. There weren't like, I wasn't having these conversations myself necessarily. I mean, at times I was, but like I think just being able to listen to other people's experiences and what they went through, not in a sense of like any big dark experiences that I went through, even just like, you know, them growing up, what did they experience, what did they have, you know, their relationships, their inner reflections. I think those things really like also helped me just start to see that, wait, like I am not the only one. It's the same with like kind of like with OCD as well. When you speak to people who have OCD, even if they don't have the same theme as you, it's just like, wait, so I'm not the only crazy one over here. Like I'm not the only one who's having these repeated thoughts over and over and over again. There are other people who are going through that as well, and that makes you feel so much less alone. And so I think that was like kind of like the starting point where that helped. And I think perspective wise, I had some like really a couple of really good role models who I think helped me understand sex and sexual desires on a very mature, rational level, at an early age, right? Like in my teens, I think I had that, and that super helped as well because I was just viewing like sex and sexual thoughts as this very from a moral angle, from a moral angle, from an angle of values, and from an angle of religion as well, because that kind of still was somewhat there in the background. So I was just primarily basing my own judgment of myself based off of that, and I think having a more evolutionary and rational, mature perspective around sex and sexual desire about human beings, how that varies from literally each and every single human being, how that's different for each person, how everyone's like bedroom desires and whatnot also vary. That just it, take like help me take a step back and be like, I'm not what I thought I was like when I was younger. Like this is, even if like let's say these are morally wrong things, these are also things that I cannot control. These aren't things that I cannot control or manufacture when I have sexual thoughts, what kind of sexual thoughts I have, and what my sexual preferences are. That is, if that were true, then like literally the world would be a very homogeneous place. Like I think everybody would have almost like the same kind of desires, because everyone would be able to manufacture what the majority is doing, I think, and everyone would kind of want to feel normal. So normal and want to be part of like the majority and things like that. So I think considering all of that, it just like that. I think that was a massive help for me. So that did tone down the chronic guilt and shame, at least when it came to sexual desires and sexual thoughts. But still, again, it was this constant like I had pangs of chronic guilt and shame in the middle of the night before going to sleep, running over things in my head of like, oh, if I hadn't done that, maybe I would feel okay right now. If I hadn't gone through that, I would be a less anxious person. And I saw my anxiety as proof that I was truly guilty, right? Because I thought if I hadn't actually done bad things, or if I hadn't like hurt other people or whatever, then I wouldn't be feeling anxious. So because I'm feeling anxious, that means that is proof, that is evidence. So either I need to go over the past over and over again, either I need to like apologize to people, um, or I need to find a way to get rid of anxiety, because I can't change the past. So maybe I can get rid of the present anxiety that I'm facing. So that was where like a lot of my internal analysis, constant emotional checking also then came into play. Because yeah, I think in my somewhere in my early 20s, mid 20s, early 20s, I think the sexual stuff got very okay and normal for me. Like that's my chronic guilt and shame kind of like lifted off of that. But then it was still with like relationships and how again ethics and decency and whatnot, things, making mistakes, not wanting to look stupid. That was another big one for me. In so many different areas, I didn't want to look stupid. I didn't want to look like I didn't know something. I didn't want to be wrong, like saying I was wrong, or saying having to say sorry for something that I was wrong about. That felt like, I don't know. At times it felt like I was like putting nails in my hand or something. It just, yeah, it felt painful in some way. And that was because I was taking it too personally, like some ego hit, that because I was wrong, that just dismantles my entire ego and my like self. And I think, and I genuinely, I think the biggest turn for me that came with chronic guilt and shame was when I read The Myth of Self Esteem, because just even with some of the initial chapters, it just like it made like complete sense to me quite immediately, to be honest, of why I was internally suffering and why I was constantly going over the past, and why I still wasn't feeling better despite doing so much inner psychological analysis and like reading about like self help and meditation and this and that and doing compulsions. Like it made so much sense why I was still stuck with like beating myself up, because again I was just using bad stuff to define myself. And the thing is, like, even the good stuff doesn't define you. It's that you are just a complex human being who has multiple flaws and multiple good things. And like, you cannot say I'm good because I have 100 good things and one bad thing, and you can not say I'm a bad person because I have five bad things and like 10 good things. Like, no definition stands true. Like, both those things are true at the same time. You're just someone who has good traits and bad traits. Literally every single human being on planet Earth. And like, it does not matter like what kind of, because then it's like, oh yeah, I, even if I have 100 good things but my bad is so bad that it outweighs the other. No, because then you, I mean, if that is true, that means that all your good traits need to have some numerical weightage added to it, and all your bad things need to have some numerical weightage added to it, and then it needs to be weighed out, and then that would determine whether you are a good person or a bad person. Like, no, that does not happen. Like, it's, I mean, and if you did, let's say you even did that, and let's say your good deeds or your good traits out, I mean, weightage wise, numerical value wise, they outweighed that one super bad thing that you think there is, you would still be like, yeah, that still doesn't satisfy me because my bad is still very bad. So, I mean, even if there was some kind of numerical value, but there is no numerical, even you give $1 million to like some charity, that's still not a numerical value on how good you are as a person. We've seen so many examples in history, some of the people who have committed some of the worst crimes, and they have been the most philanthropic people to exist. So, I mean, so where do you then place that numerical value, and how do you weigh those things? And the thing is that both things can be true at the same time, and that's something that makes OCD sufferers very uncomfortable, because we are comfortable in very black and white things: good, bad, right, wrong, yes, no, right? The complexity of things and the gray area is where, and the uncertainty. Again, I have mentioned that before. That's where people really want to run away from. And I think when I started to realize that, and also started to realize that I am an ongoing process as a human being, even if I'm recovered and if I'm overall a rational person, I'm still an ongoing process, because there's so many things that I'm still learning about myself, about life around me, about people around me, like, and it's a constant learning curve. My learning as a human being has not ended. Me changing and evolving as a person, like, eventually, if I and like when I enter like a solid relation, like a long-term relationship, and maybe if I have kids, I don't know about that yet, but if I have kids or something, that's going to change me as a person, and that's going to be a learning curve. I'm going to make so many mistakes with that as well. So I'm an ongoing process. Even till I die, I will be an ongoing process even till then as well, much like everybody else. So I think those kind of concepts just really, really hit home for me, and I started to see things not as, oh, I need to have this categorical, like, definition to me as a person. I started to view things in a more balanced way, and I started to view things in a more, like, again, rational way. And then also looking at, again, fear of rejection, because that was a massive one for me. What if other people did think badly of me? What if people thought um I didn't act morally correctly? What if people thought I was a very sexual person? What if I was misunderstood by people? That was a massive one for me. That was like the root of me basically compulsively over explaining myself over and over and over again to people, because I just wanted to make absolutely sure that they knew exactly what my intentions were, where I was coming from. Because if they thought something else that made me feel so uncomfortable, I thought that my narrative about my own self in other people's head is out of my control. So I wanted to really massively control that. So fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood, um, fear of upsetting other people, fear of being misinterpreted as a person, fear of coming across as stupid, fear of people, valuable people in my life, like, just ending ties with me. These were where, when I started to break those things down, and when I started to also again, look at those things as less black and white as well. Like if people want to not talk to me, no matter how much I try to explain myself to them, that is also their choice as well, even if I don't like that choice. So, and I have to have the serenity to understand that that's not something that I can control. I cannot make that happen. So there's a lot of like other acceptance that comes into play with this as well. So self acceptance and other acceptance go like very much hand in hand that way. They're like kind of like two sides of the same coin. So I was so breaking those fears down also helped bring down the levels of chronic guilt and shame, because the reason that you're feeling so chronically guilty and shameful is because you're like, these fears can't come true. If they come true, then my entire life is going to go up in flames. But it doesn't, right? Um, even if people did leave you, even valuable people who you value super a lot, even if they left, life does not go up in flames at all. And I've had so and I reflected on this like while working on this. On breaking this down, I also reflected on like a lot of things in my past life as well. Some friendships at the time that I thought were super valuable, they kind of like either there was a falling out, or even not. I didn't, because I've not had, with the exception of maybe like two or three falling outs in my life, I think uh, other than that, it's just people getting just naturally distant over time, because life changes, people move and whatnot, so things like kind of like fade away a little bit. So there was that element, like, and I reflected on those and I thought, oh my, like, because in that moment I felt like that I cannot survive without this friendship. I cannot survive fully, and I will feel empty. There would be a void in my life if I don't have this person or this friendship or this bond. And when that kind of faded away and you grow apart, you just naturally settle into a new life and mold, and then you think, why? I mean, how and why did I think that this specific friendship was perpetual? And oh my god, the amount of time I fixated on it. So I think really reflecting on that also really helped me understand that I've already been through these worst fears that I have right now, and actually life is pretty good. So of course, this wasn't like me just sitting down thinking this and feeling, oh, all that. It took me really like a while to see my life philosophy in a different way, change my philosophy of relationships as well, not seeing them as infinite, but relationships having a shelf life, because that is the true reality of things. Relationships have a shelf life. And no matter how unconditional some things feel, there is always, in friendships, in the end, there is always something conditional, even in friendships and relationships as well. So, and based off of that, they have a shelf life, right? And shelf life even through deaths, by the way. So, yeah, so these are some of the things that I want to touch upon today. These are some of the things I want to elaborate on and just talk about my journey, because like there might be someone who has been through something like this. So I hope this helps you. I hope this makes sense to you. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, please pop them down below. If you want me to expand on this in any future video, please let me know and I'll do that as well. Take care. Bye.